The wind howled across the dark alien forest, cold and sharp like knives above the black trees. A broken moon hung in the sky, cracked, glowing faintly like a dying lantern. Jack, a human traveler, walked alone through the undergrowth, his boots crunching the frost-covered leaves. He wasn't a soldier, not even a hero, just a mechanic from Earth. Stranded here after a shuttle crash, but tonight, something was different. He heard it, a sound not normal, not wind, not an animal. It was a cry, soft but full of pain. A weeping voice carried across the trees. Not human, but close. It made Jack stop, his breath visible in the cold night air. He tightened his jacket and followed the sound deeper into the woods. Branches scratched his arms, and thorns tore his sleeves. But the crying grew louder. Then he saw her. Beneath a silver rock, shaped like a claw, a woman alien sat curled. Against the stone, her skin was a soft purple gray. Glowing faintly under the moonlight, long silver hair tangled across her shoulders. Her hands were pressed to her belly, and tears ran down her cheeks, leaving glowing trails. Jack crouched. Slowly, not wanting to scare her. "Hey," he said softly. "Are you hurt?" She looked up, fast, eyes wide and bright blue. Full of fear, she hissed weakly and tried to move away. Jack raised both hands. No, I won't hurt you." She blinked, then froze, her body trembling. She looked like she hadn't eaten or slept in days. He took a step closer and knelt. "What happened?" he asked, slowly, gently. She opened her mouth. Struggling to speak, words came broken, mixed with her native language, but Jack could understand some. "Eggs," she whispered, voice shaking. "My eggs gone." Jack blinked, confused. "Eggs?" he asked. She pointed toward a small patch of moss beside the rock. Jack walked closer, heart heavy. There lay a nest, soft and woven with alien leaves, but it was empty. Only a few cracked shell pieces remained, some stained with dried, glowing liquid. Jack felt a chill, not from the wind, but from the realization. Someone had stolen them. Who did this? he asked. She shook her head, eyes full of grief. "Hunters," she muttered, "took them. In ships." Gone. Jack sat beside her, not speaking for a while. He had seen a lot since landing here, creatures, storms, alien ruins, but nothing hit him like this. She wasn't just sad, she was broken. Her eggs, her children, were stolen, like property, and she had nothing left. "I'll help you," he said finally. She looked up, eyes wide with surprise. "Why?" she asked, barely above a whisper. Jack shrugged. "Because no one else will." He pulled out a heating pad from his bag and gave it to her. She clutched it close, warming her hands. Jack looked at the trail near the nest, tiny prints, scorch marks from engines, and slime trails. "Can you walk?" he asked. She nodded slowly. He helped her up, and for a moment she leaned on him, too weak to stand alone. "Name," she said after a while. "Laura." "Jack," he replied. "We'll find them, Laura, I promise." They began walking back toward his small shelter. He knew the forest was dangerous at night, but something inside him burned stronger than fear. This wasn't just about helping an alien stranger. This was about doing something right, even if it meant walking straight into danger. Even if it meant facing enemies he had never met under the broken moon. Two souls walked together, one human, one alien, bound not by blood, but by grief and the spark of hope. Jack looked at the stars above and whispered, "Hold on, little ones, we're coming for you." Morning came slow and cold. The sun on this alien world rose red, casting long shadows across the jungle floor. Jack knelt by the nest again, eyes sharp, scanning the ground for any clue. Laura sat close by, silent, but watching him, her arms wrapped tightly around her body. She hadn't spoken much since last night, but her eyes said enough: pain, fear, and now a little hope. Jack touched one of the broken shells, gently, like he might break it even more. It was soft and still warm, meaning the eggs hadn't been gone long. Then he saw it. A thin line of shimmering slime across a patch of stones. Jack leaned closer, his fingers tracing it. The trail curved toward the deeper forest, hidden under moss and leaves. He turned back. "Laura, come look." She crawled to him and hissed softly when she saw the trail. Her fingers touched it too. She nodded, whispering, "Yes, them. My children." Jack stood up, checking the charge on his small pulse scanner. Not a weapon, but it could detect heat and movement. "I think they went that way," he said, pointing. Laura slowly stood as well, legs shaky. "You sure you're ready?" She didn't answer in words, just stepped forward, past him. Following the trail like a mother wolf, Jack followed close. The jungle changed quickly. Trees grew taller, their roots lifting the ground like bones under skin. Strange fruit hung low and glowed faintly, some pulsing like beating hearts. Jack saw more signs: crushed branches, black burn marks from landing thrusters, and something else, metal fragments. He picked one up, a tiny disc, maybe a badge or tag. It had alien writing on it. Laura's eyes widened. "Slavers," she whispered. "They sell eggs." Jack's jaw tightened. He had heard of alien poachers before selling rare creatures. Stolen young, even body parts. But this, stealing unborn life from a grieving mother, was a new kind of evil. "We keep moving," Jack said, trying to stay calm, but inside, his anger was boiling. They walked for hours, the trail winding through wet grass and sharp rocks. At one point, Laura stumbled, her foot bleeding from a cut. Jack helped her sit, then tore a strip from his sleeve and wrapped her wound. She looked at him, confused. "No pain?" he asked. She smiled weakly. "Pain always," she replied. "But now?" Less alone, they moved again, and the forest slowly thinned. In the distance, smoke rose thin and black. Jack pulled out his scanner and pointed it toward the smoke. Several heat signatures flickered. "Camp," he whispered. "Could be them," Laura hissed softly, her body trembling not with fear, but with rage. "My eggs." There they crawled through the last patch of tall grass and hid behind a fallen log. Below them, in a clearing, was a crude outpost, metal boxes, dirty tents, and one small ship. Inside a cage near the campfire, Jack spotted something glowing. Faintly 3 eggs. Even from this far, they looked fragile and weak. He clenched his fists. Slavers walked around the camp, big creatures with armored suits and sharp weapons. Too many to fight head-on, Jack counted maybe 6. Not including the one guarding the ship, too risky, but maybe not impossible. "We need a plan," Jack whispered. Laura leaned close. Eyes narrowed. "Night," she said. "I shine. Distract." Jack turned to her, surprised. "Shine." She nodded, then touched her skin. Her hand glowed slightly. "My kind. A glow in fear. Or love," she said, then looked away, embarrassed. "I can make them follow," Jack thought. For a long moment, then nodded. "I'll go for the eggs while you lead them away." Laura hesitated. "Danger." "For me, danger for both," Jack replied, "but we get them back." She looked into his eyes, and for the first time, there was fire there. Not just sorrow, not just pain, but purpose. A mother's strength. They crawled back into the jungle to wait for darkness. As the alien sun dipped below the trees, the cold returned, but neither of them felt it. They sat close, quiet, preparing. Laura whispered names, maybe her children's, maybe prayers. Jack didn't interrupt. He simply rechecked his gear and waited. The stars above blinked into place. Soon, it would begin. And Jack knew whatever happened next, he wouldn't let her cry alone again. The forest was silent, too silent. Even the bugs had stopped singing as night fell. Darkness covered everything like a blanket. Thick and full of tension. Only the glow from Laura's skin lit the space between the trees, soft and ghost-like. She sat still behind a thick trunk. Breathing slow, her body was calm but inside, her heart pounded like thunder. This was her moment. Her children were so close, just beyond those burning campfires. Jack crouched beside her, whispering the plan one last time. When I see them. Leave the cage, I'll go in. You only have minutes, she said. Jack nodded. Minutes are enough. He touched her arm gently. You sure you're ready? Laura looked at him, her glow rising stronger. I was born for this, she whispered. Then she stepped into the open. She moved like wind, graceful, quick, silent. As she reached the edge of the camp, she triggered her glow fully. Her body shimmered in soft, violet light, catching the eyes of two slavers at once. They shouted in their language and gave chase, thinking she was a lure from the wild. She ran in circles, slow enough to lead them deeper, fast enough to stay out of reach. From the other side, Jack moved. He slipped through the shadows like smoke. Weaving between crates and broken machines, he reached the cage, heart racing. 3 eggs sat inside, glowing faintly like dying candles. One pulsed softly, it was still alive. Another had a crack. Jack didn't waste a second. He pulled out his toolkit and began unlocking the cage. Metal creaked under his hands. He glanced back. One guard was still nearby, pacing with a rifle. Ugh. Jack froze as the cage popped open with a click. The sound alerted the guard. Jack dove into the cage just as the slaver turned. Holding his breath, he lay flat. The guard came closer, peering into the dark. But the egg's soft glow covered Jack's scent and body. The guard grunted and turned away, distracted by shouting from the woods. Laura was still doing her part. Jack grabbed all 3 eggs gently, wrapping them in his scarf. He slipped out and crept toward the side. But then he heard something behind him. A voice, not a slaver. Not Laura. It was deep, almost mechanical. Human, it growled. Jack turned slowly. A tall creature stood there, black armor covering its body. Its helmet glowed red. Thief, it said. Stepping closer, you don't belong. Jack didn't answer. He lunged. He slammed a flash bomb into the dirt. A burst of white light blinded the enemy. Jack ran, ducking under ropes and sliding behind a supply bin. Blaster shots flew past him. One grazing his arm, he didn't stop. He ran into the jungle, holding the eggs close. Laura was already waiting near the rocks when she saw him. Her body pulsed with light and relief. Jack dropped beside her, breath heavy. I got them, he said. She didn't answer. She simply reached out and touched the eggs, tears rising again. But this time, they were not from grief. They were from hope. Suddenly, a voice echoed through the trees. You will die for this. It was the armored slaver, his steps heavy. Breaking branches as he chased them, Laura hissed and pulled Jack back. We go, she said. They ran deeper into the trees, dodging roots and sliding through bushes. But the hunter followed, always close. Too close, Jack whispered. He's tracking us. We need help. Laura thought for a moment, then looked at the stars. There's a tribe near the cliffs, she said. They hate the slavers. Will they help us? They owe me, she said with a faint smirk. They turned toward the cliff path, narrow and winding, behind them. Red lights moved fast. The hunter was not alone. Anymore, others joined him, shouting, scanning, shooting. Jack grabbed a flare from his belt and tossed it into the trees. It exploded, filling the forest with fire and smoke. They reached the cliffs just as Jack's legs gave out. He fell to one knee, the eggs still safe in his arms. Laura looked down the slope and let out a strange whistle. A low drum beat answered. Then, out of the shadows. Tall figures appeared, Lian. Warriors with bone spears and glowing tattoos. One stepped forward. Recognizing Lyra, he nodded once, then looked at Jack. "You brought her children back," he said. Jack just nodded, too tired to speak. The warrior raised his hand. The forest behind them lit up with battle cries. The fight wasn't over yet. But they were no longer alone. The battle drums still echoed through the cliffs as Jack opened his eyes. The smoke had settled. The sounds of chasing slavers were gone, but the danger was not. He sat against a rock wall. His arms still wrapped tightly around the eggs. Laura knelt beside him, her eyes scanning the jungle path below. "We lost them." "For now," she said quietly. The alien tribe had vanished back into the forest after helping them escape. Silent protectors, they never stayed long. But they had whispered one warning before they left. "The real nest is deeper, underground." Laura knew what they meant. She remembered stories of the old mining tunnels, long ago turned into dens for poachers and shadow dealers. It was there her eggs were taken first. That was the true nest, and that's where they had to go. Jack stood slowly, his legs stiff. He looked down at the eggs, to glowed softly. The third was dull, barely alive. "There's not much time," he said. "They will die," Laura whispered, voice shaking. "If we wait." Jack nodded. "Then?" "We go now." They followed a narrow trail that twisted down into the roots of the cliffs. Cold wind passed through dark stone openings like whispers from the dead. At last, they reached the old entrance, hidden behind thorny vines. Metal doors lay broken, rusted from age and weather, but the deeper tunnels still work, powered by stolen generators. The slavers had made it their home. Jack switched on his scanner, which showed a glowing map. Below them were levels of heat signals, figures moving in tight circles. Guard shifts, storage rooms, and deep inside, a chamber burning hot, likely the incubation vault. "That's where the rest of your kind's eggs must be," Jack whispered. Laura's body tensed, her glow rising without control. "They are using them," she hissed, "for trade." Maybe worse. They stepped inside, the tunnel swallowing them like the throat of a beast. The walls were damp, pulsing with old tech. Alien graffiti marked old panels, some in warning, others in blood. Lights flickered above them, swinging slightly, like something had just passed. Footsteps echoed, but from which direction? They couldn't tell. Jack moved first, silent, slow. Laura behind him, holding the egg bundle close. She had wrapped them in her body cloth, close to her skin to keep them warm at a sharp corner. Jack froze. Two guards stood ahead, arguing, their weapons leaning against the wall. Jack scanned the shadows and found a vent just big enough. He slid into it, motioning for Laura to follow. They crawled through tight pipes for several minutes, the sound of machines humming around them. At last, they reached a grate above a large room. What they saw made their hearts drop. Below them was a chamber filled with eggs, glowing in different colors: blue, green, gold, violet, each resting in a tube, hooked to wires. Some twitched weakly, others didn't move at all. Slavers walked between them, checking readings, injecting chemicals, experimenting. Laura gasped silently, her hand covering her mouth. Jack clenched his jaw. "This is wrong," he whispered. So wrong, he spotted a console near the center of the room, likely controlling power and locks. "We shut it all down," he said. "How?" Laura asked, eyes wide. Jack reached into his bag and pulled out a pulse Bama tool used for mining. "I rewire this. We black out the system." He opened the vent and dropped into the shadows of the chamber. Laura stayed above, holding the eggs tightly. Jack crept behind crates. Avoiding light, he worked fast, setting the bomb beside the power console. But as he pressed the final code, a voice rang out. Human. It was him again, the black-armored slaver from the camp. He stepped From the shadows, weapon drawn, red lights glowing from his helmet, you return again. Foolish, he growled. Jack raised his hands, slowly, stalling for time. I didn't come for you, he said. I came for them, before the slaver could react. The bomb activated. A surge of blue lightning jumped across the wires, frying systems and shattering lights. The chamber went dark. Alarms blared, machines sparked. Egg chambers opened one by one, releasing their precious cargo. Laura jumped down from the vent. Running to help gather the freed eggs, chaos filled the room as slavers stumbled in the dark. Shouting and firing blindly, Jack tackled the armored slaver into a wall. The two wrestling in the flickering lights. The slaver was strong, but Jack was desperate. He grabbed a loose pipe and slammed it across the helmet, cracking it open. The creature inside shrieked in pain and fell back, stunned. Laura, go. Jack shouted, grabbing as many eggs as he could. She ran, cradling her own first, then helping others. They escaped through a back tunnel just as more guards arrived. Behind them, the generator exploded, throwing flames into the air. They didn't stop running until they reached the surface again. The cold wind hit their faces as stars lit the sky. They collapsed in the grass. Breathless, arms full of glowing eggs. Laura looked at Jack, eyes wide and trembling. You did it, she whispered. Jack looked up at the stars and smiled weakly. No, he said, we did it. The stars above blinked quietly as smoke curled up from the shattered tunnels behind them. Jack's lungs burned, every breath thick with dust and heat. He lay in the grass, his shirt torn, blaster wounds grazing his shoulder. Laura sat beside him, cradling the 3 eggs close to her chest. More eggs from the vault lay wrapped in cloth bundles beside them, too many to carry, too many to leave behind. They had saved some, but not all. Still, there was no time to grieve, because the slavers weren't dead. They were coming. Jack's scanner let out a low beep. 6 fast-moving red dots raced across the map straight toward them. He sat up fast, pain stabbing his side. They're on us, he gasped. Laura looked toward the hills, then at the dark gorge below. There, she said, pointing to the edge of the jungle. A narrow ravine opened into the earth like a giant wound. At the bottom ran a rushing river with broken stone bridges across. Jack swallowed hard. That's not a path, he said. It's our only path, she replied, already on her feet. Clutching the eggs, they moved fast, their steps uncertain across slippery moss and sharp roots. Behind them, the red lights of slaver rifles cut through the dark like angry eyes. A blast hit a tree beside Jack, showering him with burning bark. They kept running at the first stone bridge. Jack stopped. The structure was old, cracked in places. One wrong step and they'd fall into the river far below. He stepped first, testing the weight. Follow close, he called. Laura moved carefully. Behind him, her arms wrapped tight around the eggs. Halfway across, a bolt of energy struck the side. Part of the bridge crumbled, rocks tumbling down into the river with a loud splash. Jack grabbed Laura's hand and pulled her to the other side. Just in time. One of the cloth bundles slipped from her shoulder. An egg rolled toward the edge. No, she cried. She dove, catching it with both hands, her body hanging halfway off the bridge. Jack pulled her up with all his strength. They collapsed again. Breathless, she held the egg to her face and whispered, still warm, but there was no time to rest. The enemy was almost on them. Jack looked around, searching for cover. Ahead was a narrow cave, hidden under tree roots, just big enough to crawl through. This way, he said. Pulling her forward, inside the cave, the light faded. The air smelled of wet earth and old stone. They crawled for several meters until the path opened into a hollow space. A small underground spring shimmered with faint blue light. Safe, for now. Jack slumped against a wall. pressing a cloth to his shoulder. Wound. Laura checked the eggs, placing them gently on soft moss. The silence returned, broken only by their heavy breathing. But it didn't feel peaceful. It felt like the eye of a storm. How many eggs did we save? Jack asked. Laura counted softly. 8. Out of maybe 30, she said, voice low. Jack looked down, regret in his chest. It wasn't enough, he muttered. She shook her head. 8 is more than none. She placed a hand on his arm, her glow soft. You gave me something I thought was lost forever. Suddenly, the cave shook an explosion nearby. The slavers had found the tunnel entrance. Their voices echoed, barking commands in their alien tongue. They're in the cave, Jack said, standing. We can't outrun them here. He scanned the chamber, then saw it another tunnel, narrow, high above the spring. A natural exit, maybe. He lifted the egg bundles and nodded to Laura. We go up. She climbed first. Holding one bundle, her feet slipping on the stone, Jack pushed from below, ignoring the pain in his arm. As they reached the top, a blast lit up the lower tunnel. The slavers were there, weapons drawn, eyes glowing. Jack turned and fired a flare behind him. The heat and smoke filled the lower cave, giving them seconds to disappear. They climbed through the tight passage and emerged into cold night air once again. But the forest was gone. Before them stretched wide plains of gray rock and ash. No cover, no trees, just open land, and far in the distance, blinking lights from a human outpost. Jack smiled weakly. That's my signal tower, he whispered. If we reach it, we can call for help. Laura's face lit up with new hope. Then we run again, she said, and so they did. Across the cracked plains, carrying life in their arms. With monsters behind them and stars above, chased not for power, not for gold. For something far more rare, a mother's love, a human's courage. And the last chance to save what still remained. The open plains stretched forever, cold and silent under the pale moons. Jack ran with every bit of strength left in his body. His boots hit the cracked ground hard, and his wounded shoulder throbbed with each step. Laura ran beside him, her breath fast and shaky. She held the egg bundle tight to her chest, glowing softly in the darkness behind them. The slavers roared like beasts. Closing in, they had no forest to hide in now, no rocks to cover behind. Just wind, dust, and fading hope, but far ahead. A blinking blue light kept flashing steady, constant. The signal tower. Jack's makeshift camp beacon set weeks ago to call for rescue ships. That was their last chance. He glanced at the scanner on his wrist, 3 red dots only 50 meters behind. We can't outrun them much longer, he said through gasps. Laura looked at the light ahead. Then, at the eggs. We don't need to run, she said. Eyes narrowing, we fight. Jack stopped at the edge of a dried crater, a good place to make a stand low ground. Curved walls and some broken metal crates nearby, old cargo from forgotten battles. He dropped the eggs gently into a soft patch of moss beside a container. Laura did the same, carefully covering them with her shawl. She turned to him, her face glowing with determination. I protect the eggs, she said. You sure? You fight better, she said simply. Jack smirked. Not by much. He opened one of the crates and found tools and old fuel cell. 2 broken blasters and coils of wire. Enough for a trap, maybe. He got to work fast, setting up lines of charged cable across the crater entrance. The fuel cell, rewired, became a makeshift mine. Laura scattered sharp metal shards across the path and placed stones to block easy access. It wasn't much, but it was something. Then they waited. Crouched low behind the crates, Jack's breath slowed, his fingers curled around a blaster. Laura sat quietly, hands over the eggs, whispering in her alien tongue. It sounded like a lullaby. Then came the footsteps, heavy, armored, crushing the ground like thunder. 3 slavers appeared over the hill. One of them was the black-armored hunter from the tunnel. His red eyes locked onto them at once. "You think you can escape?" he growled. Jack didn't answer. The first slaver stepped into the crater. Triggering the wire, sparks flew. Electricity surged up his legs, and he screamed, falling. The second ran forward right over the buried mine. Boom! The ground exploded, throwing him into the air, limbs twisted and smoking. The third, the hunter, kept walking, unshaken, slow, deadly. He fired his weapon, and Jack rolled to the side. The blast burning through the crate, Laura screamed as a shot missed the eggs by inches. Jack stood and fired back, hitting the hunter's chest plate. But the armor held. The hunter leaped into the crater, slamming Jack to the ground. The blaster flew from Jack's hand. The alien grabbed his throat, lifting him up with one arm. "You stole from me," the hunter growled. "Now you pay," Jack choked, his vision fading, but then light, bright, glowing light from behind. Laura, her entire body shining like fire, charged toward the hunter. She screamed in her native tongue and slammed into the slaver. Breaking his grip on Jack, the hunter turned and struck her, sending her crashing into the dirt. Jack grabbed a metal rod from the ground and stabbed it into the crack in the hunter's armor. The creature howled in pain. Jack pressed the end of a live cable to the rod. Electricity surged through the slaver's body. He screamed, sparks flying from his suit. Then he collapsed, twitching. Jack dropped to his knees. Coughing, Laura crawled to him, blood on her lips, but still alive. "It's over," Jack whispered. She looked around at the fallen enemies. Then her eyes turned to the eggs, still safe, still glowing. In the distance, a deep hum filled the sky, a ship. Jack looked up and saw lights blinking in a pattern he recognized. "Rescue," he said, with a weak laugh. "They heard my signal." The human ship landed slowly. Its doors opening, medics ran toward them, blinking at the sight of glowing eggs and a bleeding alien woman beside a battered human. Jack pointed to the eggs. "Save them first," he said, then passed out. Soft beeping filled the air. Jack opened his eyes slowly. The ceiling above him white and smooth. He blinked, confused for a moment. Unsure where he was, then he felt it a blanket. Clean sheets, warm light on his face. He was alive. A medical drone floated beside him, scanning his vitals. Small lights blinked gently across its surface. Jack sat up slowly. His shoulder wrapped in white bandages, his body ached, but his heart beat strong. The memories returned in pieces. Laura, the chase, the eggs, the fight in the crater. He looked around, panic rising. "Where is she?" he whispered. "Where's Laura?" The door to the room slid open with a soft hiss. And there she was. Laura stepped in, her body still bruised. One arm in a sling, but her eyes were glowing with something Jack hadn't seen before. Joy. She walked over slowly and placed a warm hand on his. "You wake?" she said, with a soft smile. "Yeah," Jack breathed. "Are they safe?" She nodded, her glow pulsing. "They are more than safe." She led him out of the medroom and down a short corridor. They entered a bright chamber filled with soft heat and gentle hums. At the center of the room was a long table, covered in soft cloth and glowing warmth pads, and resting their great alien eggs. 3 had already hatched. Tiny creatures with soft skin and sleepy eyes lay curled in small baskets. They chirped gently, warm and alive. Jack stepped closer, his throat tight. One of the little ones lifted its head and let out a tiny sound, half song, half purr. It looked at Jack, then slowly crawled toward him. He reached out his hand, and the small being wrapped its fingers around his finger. Laura stood beside him, her voice low. "They know you," she whispered. Jack laughed softly, his eyes wet. "I guess I'm a dad now, he said with a half-smile. Laura's glow brightened. Yes, she said simply. You are? Days passed aboard the human rescue ship. The medics took care of them. And the eggs were given their own chamber with round-the-clock care. Jack spent every day sitting beside them, telling stories, repairing small things for the crew. But always returning to the babies. Laura watched him quietly most days. One night, under the stars on the viewing deck, she spoke. You saved more than eggs, she said. You saved me. Jack looked at her. Toe, I couldn't leave you alone. He replied. She turned to face him fully. Where I come from. A male who bonds with eggs becomes part of the nest. Jack raised an eyebrow. Are you saying? I'm part of your family now. She nodded. You already are. The ship docked weeks later at a human outpost near a safe border colony. Jack and Laura were offered separate housing, but she refused. We stay, she said firmly, together. The colony accepted the alien young, promising care and protection. And Jack, he chose not to return to Earth. He had found something better. He and Laura built a small home at the edge of the forest near the colony base. Simple, quiet, warm. The young ones grew fast, curious and playful, always crawling onto Jack's lap or climbing Laura's back. Some even started calling him soft clicks and sounds words that meant protector. Warm skin and second heart. The world outside stayed wild, dangerous, uncertain. But inside their home, there was peace. Jack fixed machines during the day, taught the little ones to build small toys at night. Laura planted glowing flowers around their house, telling stories of her ancestors and how stars once guided travelers home. One evening, as the sun set in orange and violet skies, Jack sat on the porch holding one of the babies. The child's tiny head rested against his chest. Laura came beside him and leaned gently on his shoulder. She whispered something in her native tongue. Jack looked at her, confused. What did you say? She smiled softly. I said, this is the life I wept for. Jack smiled too, and I'm glad I was the one who found it with you. Together, they watched the stars rise. Not as strangers, not as species divided by galaxies, but as a family, born from sorrow, rebuilt by kindness, and strengthened by love.